Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm a publisher at Red Penguin Books, where we publish books of all types and genres. So if you have a book in your head, or a manuscript ready to go, or maybe even 300 sheets of loose leaf, yes, we get packets full of loose leaf every single month. Visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. I'm so excited that I'm joined tonight by three authors who have absolutely unleashed themselves. Laura Kemp, the author of Evening in the Yellow Wood. Oh, that's a fun one. You're going to love hearing the storyline behind that one. I get a little shiver. I get a shiver thinking about Heavenly, the novel by Thomas Duffy as well. And then just for all of those movie buffs out there, it's still Strictly Personal. Eric Friedman's follow-up to It's Strictly Personal. So if you're a movie buff out there, you're going to love this. Well, let's start with author Thomas Duffy, author of Heavenly. Thomas, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back. I'm so happy to be back with another book so shortly after we got together last summer.
I know. You're quite prolific. So you've had a busy pandemic.
Very busy. I also work on a movie book as well, just like Eric has a movie book out. So I have one coming out at the end of the year, maybe early next year, about my 100 all-time favorite, not the best movies, all-time favorite movies.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to get you and Eric in the studio with a bunch of movie lovers and some popcorn for that.
Definitely.
One,
okay?
Yes. That's
make sure Spielberg is there too.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm picturing this already with the popcorn and the cameras and the props all the time. So tell us a little bit about Heavenly.
Heavenly, it's a book that I was uncertain about writing because I've always had a fascination about what happens when we die and who doesn't. I mean, we think about it all the time, you know? We don't want to know, we want to live, but we have that, like, what if aspect of it. And I wrote this book and I had no idea how it was going to be received. I was scared. I mean, I had took a lot of risks with this book. And all of a sudden, I'm getting very good reviews on it, which is making me very happy. And the storyline basically concerns a man who's 43 years old. His name is John. He ends up getting hit by a bullet in Times Square station. He passes away and goes to a sort of like heavenly-like realm where he meets God and an officer named Andrea who sends him back to Earth to fulfill things that he had not fulfilled in his previous life, but he will not have a memory of what happened in his previous life. And this is only because he didn't fulfill a lot of things that normal people seem to fulfill: love, happiness, family, and things like that. So the book takes us on a journey where he is insecure, he's trying to find himself, and ultimately, not to give too much away, meets a woman, and it gets pretty interesting. I'll say that without giving too much away, because I don't like to give things away. I want people to read the book for themselves and discover that, because reading is about discovering, and you want to discover, this particular book, where it goes.
Absolutely. Well, I guess the moral of the story is if you'd like to rest in heaven, get it all done now on earth, huh?
Yes, exactly. Otherwise, you might have to go again. And I don't know, life is a hard journey, but sometimes, you make it happen, and when you make it happen the first time, the second time, the moral of the book is you have to make it happen. You have to make it work for you, life, because life is different for everyone, and everybody has a different perception on what's important. But I think there are overall values that are very important in general, and very, like love, family, friends, hope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by what you said, that you weren't sure how it was going to be received. Tell me about getting an idea for a book, not being sure how others were going to take it. That's quite a thing to say. So many people kind of know, oh, this is going to be a good one, but you weren't sure. Tell me about that.
I wasn't sure at all, because as a Catholic, I've obviously have my own personal beliefs, but at the same time, other religions have different beliefs. So when I'm creating a work of fiction, I've integrated different things, because reincarnation is not really part of Catholicism. So I integrated different things that may happen in respect to fiction, things that are making for an interesting book in regards to what I believe personally. However, I made myself a believer in what I wrote. So I'm like, I don't know. I make up my own religion after this book. No, I'm just, but no, I was very scared how it was going to be perceived from the perception of readers who have their own moral compass, their own faith, their own and there are some scenes of violence, some scenes of sex, things like that, which may turn readers off. So I was scared. So when I got 3 readers' favorite reviews back, and they were all positive, Indie Reader gave it 4 stars, today out of 5. Prairie's book review. I mean, I'm jumping for joy now. I just can't wait to see what Kirkus says next. And I'm happy that people are actually relating to the characters.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, and you've become a believer yourself. Who knew you were going to start writing a novel and found a religion?
No, I still believe in Catholicism, but I'm saying I almost, want things to be like they are in fiction. But reality is what we believe, what we're raised to believe, and what shapes our lives. And I still believe in Catholicism.
Oh, of course. No, I was teasing you there.
I know, I was teasing too.
That writing a book led to something much bigger. Who knew?
Yes.
But sometimes that happens. You think, oh, I don't know if this is gonna fly, and people found something. But you said something that I think is very striking. People related to your characters. Isn't it really all about creating characters that people find themselves in, that they can find a piece of something that they want to learn more about, that they want to either love or hate or something. If they don't love and hate your characters, your book is flat.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that we all can relate to a certain level of fulfillment, or the need to fulfill things in our lives, and to be happy, and to find happiness here on earth, and to discover what it is within our personal self that makes us happy. And I was just so thrilled to be able to tell the story, and that it came out as well as it did, because I was so nervous when you I told you I was writing this book. I had like about 14 pages written only. I was like, I got to continue it now because I already said it, and now I got to finish this book, and I did, and it's just so cool,
Committed.
Fantastic. Did this one go easier with the writing than the last one, or what do
The other one was like relating to the pandemic and everything, so that was a little difficult to write. I think this one went a little smoother because I had so much within me that I wanted to say. When you have a lot to say, and it makes the writing so much easier, as opposed to when you're struggling day to day. Like with the pandemic book that I wrote, Stockboy Nation, I was waiting for day to day to see what happened to write the next chapter.
Oh.
And the news and things like that. But with this, I just like like you said, the writing pours out of you with fiction, and that's what it did with this one. Right.
Did this thus feel a little more authentic to you? Because it sounds like this one just flowed.
Flowed very well, and I think that for me, I think is very authentic. Is the best way I can tell the story with the most relatable characters I can, and one of the people I've met throughout my years as a writer is an Australian writer. She does a website. Her name is Duffy the Writer, and she does the same last name as me. And she asked me a question about my books. Do I believe that my books champion the working class? And I think that they do. I think they really relate. That's why people can relate to them, because they're working class characters. I don't really create wealthy characters in a mansion, though people relate to that as well. I find my niche is with dealing with people who are everyday people, and that's what makes them so fascinating.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned your other books. I'm just going to flip this up here for everyone to see some of your other titles here. And you have been on our show with some of these. So,
yes.
and all over the place, genre-wise, too.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely not, wow, I got some success with something, I'm just going to keep repeating the same thing. No, you're trying different things each time, aren't you?
Right, and I have a couple more up my sleeve, different genres, a thriller up my sleeve, which I won't say anything about yet because it's such a great plot that I don't want anyone to steal it.
Smart.
And then I got another one, and then I got another one which I told you about the guy who wins the lottery tickets. So I'm dabbling in different genres.
Wow. Now, tell me about what you like to read. Do you read all over the place with different styles of books and authors, or do you like one particular?
I haven't read much over the pandemic because I've been so much like I haven't had the focus to read a lot. But I will say one of your guests Mark Torres. Remember him?
Oh, yes.
Big guy Jake is. I actually read it. I got it from my nephew, and I really think it's clever. So I want to read Mark Torres's new book, The Long Island
Yes,
Migrant
Long Island Margaret Fine Workers, absolutely.
Farm Workers. I want to put that on my list to do, and I'm going to try and get that as soon as possible read. And I'm sure there's a lot more coming out. I got to look into it. I mean, The Testaments was the last thing I really read, so I've been like, a little bit falling behind with the reading, but I'm
Well,
trying.
I'm delighted that you are writing during the pandemic. Not everybody is. How about our other guests here? Did you find that this kind of unprecedented time in history made you write more, read more, or neither of the above?
Laura, you first.
I did finish a sequel during
Okay.
the pandemic. Recently, or no, actually, it's the third. I totally forgot which one it is. Yeah, so I did finish a book, but it took me a lot longer.
Oh, okay.
And I found that I was just very unmotivated to even read.
Yeah, no,
And
that's a lot of people. A lot of people had that experience of feeling like, well, especially because we didn't really know how
when it
long.
was going to end, how
Right.
long you had. It's
Sometimes if
going
you
on.
know that you have, a week or 2 weeks or something,
Yeah.
but this was kind of endless.
I like bookends to things. When it's unstructured time that goes on forever, it makes me, I don't know. It does the opposite of what I wish it would
Yeah,
do.
no, that was a lot of people. How about you, Eric? More less
I'd
pressure?
say I was just, well, in a way I was like Tom. I did a lot more writing than reading. And no, I mean, what little downtime I had, I was kind of switching back and forth between editing my second book, which is what I'm talking about now, and writing my third.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not a writer by trade. I'm actually an architect. So, when I'm not when I'm not busy with my, day job, and, being a parent and a husband, that pretty much leaves the weekend. And I do my best to stay as motivated as possible to just keep going and to get, a certain amount done every weekend. Sometimes I actually accomplish that. But no, I really didn't let the pandemic stop me. If anything else, I just took advantage of some extra time and just kept moving forward.
Yeah, no, it wasn't easy for everybody. Some people have that ability to do more during this kind of time, and others were frozen.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I mean, during the worst time of it, it was more about editing my second book, which was a very tedious process because that's how I work with my publisher. They edit, then I look at it, and as an architect, I'm naturally anally retentive, so I'm, really getting deep into it and looking at every punctuation mark. So, I mean, that took extra time, and that extra time was provided, not in a good way, but there it was.
I get that. I get that. Well, since we're talking about the afterlife with Tom, Laura's book, Evening in the Yellow Wood, also has to do with death and mystery, and not really sure what goes on after that. Laura, tell us a little bit about this. And I know it takes place in Michigan, so I want to hear all about that.
It does. It's everything in the kitchen sink. That's how I like to describe it. It's kind of like what Tom was talking about. He kind of jumps between genres. This book is every genre, and I didn't set out to do that. I just started writing the story, and there was some romance, and then there was some humor, and there was some paranormal. And so people are kind of confounded by the book because they can't put it into a niche or into a category on a shelf on the bookstore. I mean, I've had bookstores say I've put it on every shelf. And it fits on all our shelves. I don't know if that's good. But it's about a young girl whose father abandons her right before her 12th birthday. Mm-hmm. And then 10 years pass, and she sees his picture in a paper of this very small, mysterious northern Michigan town based on the town that I used to live in. I didn't always live on the Indiana border. I used to live way up north. And she goes north looking for him. And she, kind of like Tom, I don't want to give, it's such a twisty book. And I stick my foot in my mouth all the time whenever a spoiler, oops, a spoiler, oops.
Nope, no spoilers here.
There's so many spoilers. but she obviously finds much more than she bargained for when she goes north. It's kind of like, I describe it like Northern Exposure, that old funny quirky TV series that I loved, but kind of mixed with Twin Peaks, the
Okay.
spooky side. So if I was to put it, a tag on it, that's what I would say. And yeah, it's just a bunch of twists and turns. And I actually finished the sequel and just finished the third. So there's 3 in this series following the same characters and set in the same locations, although the second book is also Mackinac Island, which I had to include.
Oh, Mackinac Island. Fantastic. I hope
And
we all stopped at a fudge shop while they were there.
There's a fudge shop.
Oh,
Of course, there has to be a fudge shop.
there has to be a fudge shop if they're going to Mackinac Island. That's for sure.
exactly. And horse poop, lots of that.
Oh yes, a lot of
Horse
food.
fudge. Great combo.
Tell me about writing something with so many twists and turns. Did you know where the book was going at all times, or were you just as
No.
surprised as your readers will be?
No, I'm a pantster. I don't plan. I should probably. Like, I will write an
There's
outline.
no shoulds. There's no shoulds. with
I
writing.
don't. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do that. But yeah. And then it goes in a different direction, usually from my outline, and then I just let it go. And so I kind of just gave up outlining stuff because I am super surprised a lot of times by where I am shocked. I'm surprised. I'm like, where did that come from? And the characters kind of just tell me, I mean, for lack of a better word, what
They want.
tell me their stories, and I'm along for the ride. I
Good
kind of
for
hang out.
you. Good for
And
you.
if it feels wrong, I'm a very organic writer. I like everything's very feeling oriented for me. And if it feels wrong, I will go back and change some things.
Mhm.
But 90% of the time, it was right. So I just go with it. But no, I'm a pantster.
Now, I
totally.
think, was it last week or the week before, we had a guest on who was not American, and they did not call it being a pantser. I think it was last week. She was from Britain. They call it a discovery writer.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
And I liked that so much better. You know, a
Yes.
pantser, you almost feel like you have to apologize. Like,
Yeah, like
I don't
loving
plan.
years.
No, discovery writer sounded so fancy.
I have heard that term before. Yeah,
Sounds
okay.
like a
I'm a
profession.
discovery writer.
Yes, it was like a profession. And, you know, I certainly don't want any pantsers out there to feel like you have to apologize for the way you write. I mean, some people are
I never
planners.
heard that word before today.
What, pantser?
I never heard that word before.
Oh,
No.
okay. It implies that you're flying by the seat of your pants, as opposed to you, Eric,
Okay,
who's
that makes
incredibly
sense.
type A, anal retentive. So
Thanks.
you said it. You said it. I didn't have to say that. But that's why I said I don't like people ever feeling like they have to apologize for being pantsers. So when she said that she was a discovery writer, I thought that just sounded a little more complimentary, which
It does.
never insult the way you do your art.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
You know, your art is your art. And quite frankly, I have always said of myself, and I've said this in interviews, I would love personally that experience, and I'm not a pantser, of sitting there and kind of, typing and then saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe it just happened.
It is. It's very organic. It's like you're experiencing the story with the characters. It's an interactive experience. And it's also terrifying because I'll sit down with the blank page.
Wow.
I have it's like I'm jumping off a cliff. And I
think I'd have to be very, very drunk in order
and
for
a
that.
few
to
words
happen.
start coming and then more starts coming. And it is exciting. It's kind of like jumping off a cliff and getting that
That is
tickle feeling.
exciting. Now, Tom, you're a fiction writer. You flying by the seat of your pants, or did you plan every scene?
I write an outline, and sometimes the outline isn't fleshed out enough for the book, so I need to be very creative as I'm writing. So let me expand on that a little more, and then I get my creative juices flowing, and I start a couple little things to fill in the blanks, and I come with new plot developments to take me here, and it's like a roller coaster writing, when you're writing fiction, because you start with the basic outline, and then to get the 60,000, 50,000 words, whatever it is, you need to really flesh out the ideas a little more than just the outline. So it's a lot
No,
of
course. Well, I'm so glad that you two approach it differently, just to give kind of like the green light to viewers who are writers. There is no one way You do whatever works for you. And not only is there no one way for every single author out there, there's also no one way for every single book. Many times people will be pantsers for one book and maybe plotters for another book. So, there's no one way. Now, Laura, since you have sequels with this book, did you plan a little more so that you knew that you ended with like a cliffhanger or where things were going, or do you just?
Yeah, I did with the second. I definitely wanted to, because the first one I wrote not knowing it was going to be a sequel. My publishing house kind of talked me into a series.
Uh-huh.
What in the heck? I tied this up. I tied it up real nice. It was really hard to do. And I'm like, how am I going to kind of pull on those loose ends a little bit? So I did the sequel, but I ended the sequel very much nice. I was very nice to myself for the third one. I left it open, and yeah, I did more planning for that because it's really difficult to write a sequel when you had absolutely no intention of the series. But I was happy to. I love the characters, so I was happy to continue on my journey with them, and I would love to just continue with them. They feel like close friends at this point.
I love that.
Thanks.
I love that. But that's it. The third one, she killed them all. No.
The ship sinks.
I don't know.
Oh, there might be more.
For more. Yeah, I leave everything kind of open just because, maybe I want to pantser my way through another book or discovery right through another book. I don't know.
Right through another book. You never know. Now, if you were going to speak with authors who wanted to get started and wanted to kind of discovery write themselves, what are some, ideas for tips, tricks? How do you get those voices speaking to you and getting out through your fingers? How do you do it?
Well, you have to get over being terrified of the blank page.
Okay.
Just stare it, because it's one of the most terrifying things, I think, is that blank page. What am I going to do? Even I think if you have an outline, because you're like, okay, here it is, but can I translate it to the page into anything that people are going to love, or is it just going to look like an outline or a mess? So you kind of have to just push through that fear. Sometimes I'll do writing prompts, like I'll write poetry. I'm a poet, and that'll help get kind of the wheels greased a little bit. Or I will literally just start a stream of consciousness paragraph and just jump.
Wow.
And then usually after a page or two, if I'm in the right frame of mind to write, it'll just take off on its own. It's like starting a car. You got to push it, get some momentum, then you jump in the car and start it and take off. But yeah, you have to get some momentum going.
And sometimes it's like starting a car that has a stick shift. It's not as easy.
Yeah.
and then if the right song comes on the radio in that car, then you really want to go fast.
Absolutely. I've never once had a group of authors that somehow had writing be something like starting a car.
Or like the car in Karate Kid. See, we just watched the Karate Kid with my kids. Do you remember that? How the mom could never start the car?
Yeah.
And he had to run beside it, and then he'd have to jump in, and she'd pop the clutch, and off they would go. I was just reminded of that when I was. It's kind of like that, like the car in the
Little Miss Sunshine, right? Remember that? Little Miss Sunshine, same thing.
Yes.
Oh yes, I remember that. They had that. I had to drive a stick shift car last summer, just because we were traveling, and that's what they had. So I was remembering every movie scene that ever had somebody running alongside, thinking, "This is what we need right about now."
It's like that. That's my analogy. So.
This is exactly like that. Well, we certainly have an author with us who knows all the movie scenes, all the great ones.
It's a great segue.
Movies have been around much longer than I have. I don't know all of them, but
books have been around longer than movies, but still, we'll give it to you. But Eric Friedmann certainly knows his movies, so much so that It's Strictly Personal had to go into It's Still Strictly Personal. I'm guessing we're going to have it's continuing to be strictly personal.
This is the second book in a trilogy that I've intended.
Okay.
So I'm currently writing the third one now, and so I guess it's my turn. Okay.
Well, tell us a little bit about It's Still Strictly Personal as different from It's Strictly Personal.
Sure. Well, the first book, it's this trilogy is basically a chronological memoir of my life from childhood up to, we'll say, the end of the century through the movies. So I've I have a very almost unnatural, detailed memory of my life back to the age of 3. I
Wow.
may not remember what I had for breakfast 2 days ago, but I have very detailed accounts of my life and the process of how I got from being a child to where I am now. And I've always I've always felt through the movies. Ever since I was a kid, I've always experienced my emotions, my thoughts, and my feelings through the movies. And so, whereas the first book, it's strictly personal, that is a film memoir of my life from 1975 to 82, from the ages of 8 to 16. And the recent book, it's still strictly personal, continues that personal saga from 1983 to 1981 during my teen years, my young adulthood, and just as I was starting to enter my quote manhood at the beginning of the 90s. And the third book will take me up to a certain point in my adulthood, say about 1999, and it will. There is a conclusion. I mean, for this kind of subject, look, I could go on as long
Exactly.
as I live and as long as the movies live. But in my mind, there is a stopping point, and that will be, in the third book. But it's still strictly personal. Um, a lot of this book is a journey into the 80s and a lot of the popular films of the 80s. But at the same time, um, I had reached a point in my life where the movies wasn't just about the latest smash hit blockbuster. I was by as early as high school, I was starting to discover some of the more independent features, or even some of the more independent style features that may have come from major studios. One of the turning point films for me when I was 16 was David Lean's A Passage to India. And at that age, I didn't really know David Lean. It would be years before I'd discover The Bridge on the River Kwai and Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago. But I had already experienced and loved Richard Attenborough's Gandhi.
Mm,
So I was anxious to see this new tale. And this was not just as a sample, this was not an independent release. This was from Columbia Pictures. But in my mindset, I was stepping back from Hollywood's explosions and violence and sex and whatnot, and educating myself to take a look at cinema at a different pace, a slower pace, a more educated pace. And, so yeah, of course, it's strictly personal, covers many of the blockbusters of the 80s in as much as how they affected me personally.
mm,
Remember, this is every film that I've chosen in all three of these books is a film that somehow affected me personally or changed me personally during a specific time in my life, whether it was my parents' divorce or, involvement in my education, falling in love for the first time, things like that. So films that I choose, other people may look at and say, "Oh, that was terrible. I didn't like that film."
right.
But if it means something special to me, then it's something that I felt I wanted to talk about. Whereas the biggest blockbuster that was out there maybe one year, yeah, I might have loved it. It might have been a great Friday night multiplex experience, but did I walk away feeling any different? If I didn't, then it's just a great movie, but it's not something that I want to include in what I consider a personal memoir first, rather than a list of movies.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. What is one that perhaps we would be very surprised that it affected you so deeply that it was something that most people would, wasn't even a blip on the radar?
um, those, all right. again, here's another example where I discovered a very popular director for the first time who already had a history, but this was my first experience. In 1986, I went to college at SUNY Buffalo, University of Buffalo, and there was a movie theater, triplex, across the street from my dorm, and they more or less specialized in independent films, sometimes foreign films, or if they did have studio features, I actually got to notice a pattern of which studios they carried. But that was part of my experience in exposing myself to more art type cinema. Anyway, David Lynch's Blue Velvet.
Oh, okay.
I had rented Dune probably when it was first released on videotape, but I did not equate the film with David Lynch. I was just watching this sci-fi film that everybody hated, and tell you the truth, I hated it too the first time I saw it. I didn't get it. Today I love it, but that's because I love the artist. But anyway, I'm watching Blue Velvet. I went to see it at a midnight screening, and I am seeing a style of storytelling and filmmaking that I had never experienced before. And my eyes are wide open. I'm like, I don't know who this man is, but I'm going to make sure I follow everything he does. And I mean, Blue Velvet was very popular with people, I think, who appreciate that kind of cinema or appreciate the artist behind it. Was it as popular as other, this was 1986. Could it stand up against Top Gun and Aliens and, even Platoon? No, probably not. But this was a mental turning point for me. And I said, keep your eye on this guy. And I haven't turned away since. And this is just one man, a sample.
Yeah, I love, I said when Laura was speaking about the permission to be a pantser, and when Tom was speaking, the permission to write what you want and not worry. I mean, it's hard not to worry about what other people will think. With you, Eric, it's so much about, if something means something to you.
Yeah.
And that's why I love your title. It's strictly personal.
Yeah, well, listen, I think anybody who's seen The Godfather knows where that inspiration came from.
Exactly.
But no, I mean, I haven't read everything out there. That's impossible. But I have not seen film. I've seen a lot of film criticism by professional film journalists, which I'm not, and I admit that I'm not. But I hadn't really seen a lot about how these films affected them personally. And I started thinking to myself, okay, maybe there's something that I can do here that maybe hasn't been done before. And it already started a little bit. I write a film blog that I started 11 years ago, and I had already that's more straightforward criticism, but every once in a while I get personal, tell a story. And I finally decided the story, I think, is what can be the most intriguing, because I think the thing about my books is that there's definitely a target audience. If you could care less about movies, you just watch them passively and that's it, then trust me, my book isn't for you. But I think there are a lot of people out there who, if they think of a certain film, it will take them back to a place in their past that is uniquely theirs. Uniquely theirs, doesn't belong to anybody but them. And that's what makes it special.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm trying to tap for anybody who's ever loved the movies, whether it's my generation X or to whoever.
Love that. Tom, you had this look of recognition on your face. Do you have a movie perhaps that touched you?
My first movie experience that I really remember was me crying my eyes out at the end of E.T. when he was on the bag, and I thought he was going to die. And I was crying. I'm like, he's going to die. He's going to die. And my mother was like, no, don't worry. I want to leave, Mom. And Mom took me out in the hallway and said, I promise you, E.T. will not die. I promise you.
So you missed some of it.
So I missed like 2 minutes. I went back in, and that's my first memory of how I was emotionally affected by a movie. E.T. And Poet Society, I cried my eyes out at the end, and I felt so sympathetic to it. I mean, there's so many movies from that time period, Casualties of War, or
here's a little E.T. story of my own that's in the first book. one of the things, one of the challenges that I write about is how movies affected my relationships with certain people, including my own mother, who did not feel the same way about movies that I did.
Oh.
So it was very often a challenge to relate to my own mother on that level. But I was, the first time I saw E.T., the whole family went, and I was 15. I don't think I cried, but of course I was touched like the rest of the world was by this Spielberg masterpiece. And when it's over, I remember this. I asked my mother, so what did you think of it? She says, it was cute.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to argue with my mother in a theater, but I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Puppies are cute. That's your only reaction to this? And to this day, I just want to make her take back those words. I'm like, you don't say those three simple words about this incredible motion picture.
Not everyone has the same reaction, and that goes with my
Yeah.
books as well. I've had people who react to my books, oh, it's so involving, and then people say, I didn't feel anything for the character. So it's like people have their own personal reaction to a book. Laura
Yeah.
too, probably, right?
But when you're a kid, when you're a kid and this is your mother, so you're thinking, you're thinking, okay, maybe she can see what I can see, maybe she can feel what I can feel. And when it's a different relationship. You want your mother to love what you
like
love, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
But I think of it the flip side too. I've asked my kids for movie recommendations, and especially my older son is very much into the movies. He's a theater person and a movie lover, and when he tells me what he wants me to see, I get to see more of him.
sure.
And I love that. That's a great way, through the years people recommend books, but when he recommends a movie, then
He's letting you into a part of his life and his perception.
Exactly.
Of this art.
And he's exposing a little something, and I get to see it. And unlike your mother, I want to figure out, what is it?
Right.
What is it? And it might not even be my style of movie. And he'll say that, don't watch this one, Mom, you're really not gonna.
Right.
But other times I really get to see a facet of him, which I really love.
And I think that's my, if nothing else, I mean, the inspiration is those who read this, even if they don't have their own personal memories of what I'm writing about, maybe they'll want to take another look and see because many of these films that I write about in both books, many of them are comfort films, like food. They're films that we enjoy watching over and over again, that we know by heart because they make us feel good. They take us to a safe place in our life. But it doesn't matter how many times I've seen something. Before I write about it, I usually want to get a fresh perspective because it challenges me to, I'm going to use the word confront who I was in the past when this movie was first released, when I first saw it, and how I first felt about it.
Right.
Because I may not feel the same way now. I'm a different person. I'm older. I'm supposed to be more mature, more grown up. Well, that's debatable, I'm sure. But this is a book. These are books about the past.
Yes.
And so who I was, it's something we may not always think about. But when I watch films, again, I'm forced to reckon with myself,
Right.
good or bad,
right,
painful or not, to understand it and ultimately write it down. Because not all of these are happy movie memories. There are films that I write about that really took me to a bad place when I fell in love for the first time when I was younger, and it was not the woman I'm married to. That's a success story. But these are times in our lives that may not always be pretty, but it gives me, these films give me courage to acknowledge those pieces of my life, write it down, and understand them better, come to terms with them.
You know what I love that you're talking about here? So many people I know who are writing, whether they are writing memoir or even writing fiction, but want to get a little more in touch with their characters, whether or not you, like Eric, are writing about the movies, perhaps watching movies that remind you of those times, that transport you back. If you're writing memoir and you want to remember how you felt at
Sure.
that stage,
You
I think
nailed
it's
it.
a great thing.
You
Great,
absolutely nailed it. Yeah.
absolutely. Laura,
couldn't have
how
said it
about
better.
you? Do you have a first movie memory that really, really touched you?
I love the movies. I need to get your book, Eric. And my
I
my
suspect
daughter's
we're both of
boyfriend.
the I suspect we're both of the same generation. I
I'm
mean,
really
This is a
excited.
big hello Hollywood thing here.
But I am I'm a big musical theater person. I do musical theater. So E.T., I mean, that doesn't go with musical theater, but I cried my eyes out. Same. I was, yeah, cute. Just it was a knife. That was a knife in my heart, Eric, when I heard knife in my heart.
imagine
But,
how I felt.
but Grease was the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I think I was so young, gosh, probably 2 or 3 when it came out. I was born in 1975. So
Okay.
I think it came out in 78.
78. Yeah.
I was just turning 3 years old. There's this great story where mom said, let's take all the kids to the movies. And dad suggested Grease. And mom said, she will never sit through that. She's 2 years old. She'll never sit through that. Dad said, let's try it. All my older siblings lined up, And she said that I sat on her lap and she said I had a little blonde ponytail. I never moved during the entire movie. She goes, that ponytail didn't even move. You were mesmerized. You were mesmerized by Olivia Newton-John, who, also had the blonde hair. And I thought she was me. I thought she was an angel. She was singing. And I got the record and I played it like every day after that. And it started my love for musical theater, that one movie. And I still can watch it like you, Eric. And I just am taken right back.
My family and I went to see that 6 times
Oh,
on screen. And
yeah, it's one of those that takes me exactly back to 1978,
right.
To summer and the record player. And yeah, Grease is it for me. So it really changed my life. It changed the trajectory of my life.
And that's uniquely yours. And that's very special.
And I make my kids watch it. And I was sitting there on pins and needles thinking, are they going to turn to me and say, oh, it was cute? No, they didn't. My daughters loved it. So I was
Good.
like, okay, you can live now.
I have been educating my son for 15 years on movies. Some recent stuff, some of the classic black and whites. He's getting a good education with me.
No, that's good. Yeah, I love Casablanca is my favorite black and white. And I
Mine
I
too.
forced my husband to watch it.
Mine too.
He goes, oh, it's black and white. I don't want to watch it. And I said, the best movies are the black and white.
When I was dating before I met my wife, and including my wife when I was dating her, there you go. I would make these women, if it went beyond the first or second date, they had to sit down and watch Casablanca with me.
Yeah.
And if they didn't like it, I swear part of me got very shallow like Jerry Seinfeld and started to re-examine this person. Because who doesn't like Casablanca? Come on.
Who doesn't? It has everything. Yeah, I was a little nervous my husband wouldn't like it, but he loved it. I was like, okay,
it's priceless.
I should have done it before I married him, right?
Right? It's a test. My wife passed the test.
Afterwards. He passed, though, thank goodness.
Yeah, my wife passed too.
Okay. We're married to the right people then.
Right.
I think the first movie that impacted me, that just like kept me up nights, and you were talking about movie musicals, The Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz. I mean, that's before my time, but it was on for some reason.
On
remember they
TV every year.
Every year they would air it.
CBS.
And, I would hide behind the couch the entire time she was on screen. She's only on screen. What is it, Eric? 14 minutes or something? I
don't know. I actually, I hate to shatter everybody's opinion that I kind of stopped watching that movie when I was 12. I don't know. I felt I got too old for it. And Laura, no disrespect. There's selected few, but I'm not much of a musical as a genre of film. Musicals are not my highest. There's a few, they're not my highest genre of appreciation. But again, that's what makes it. That's what makes it for me, and it's what makes it for you. That's what
right.
makes
Strictly
cinema
personal.
unique for everybody.
Well, like books, that's why there are so many, there are 10,000 different categories on Amazon of books. That's why there are so many different movies and so many different genres, because
Absolutely.
there's something for everyone. And what I love is find what it is that touches you.
Mhm.
You know, and don't worry about so much what touches other people, what touches you. And I really love that thought of watching something to bring you right back to that time period.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you want to know whether you're writing or some other reason you want to be brought back. Well, the three of you were chock full of ideas to get all of our writers. We have a lot of writers who watch the show, and they have no excuse after this episode not to be running right over and start writing, because you were filled with ideas. But for our readers out there, I do want to remind them of where they can find you and your books. Heavenly by Thomas Duffy, and plenty of other books by Thomas Duffy as well. You can visit him at his website and check this out. And he's still at the computer, so he's still working. So there's more to come. Evening in the Yellow Wood by Laura Kemp Books, and there are 2 more after this, and there might even be more. She's not really closing the door on that one. So maybe, and certainly it's still strictly personal. For sure there's a 3rd. He said that's it, but you know, I don't believe him. So
We'll see.
We'll see. I don't know. I don't
Never
know.
say never.
Never say never. But for our movie lovers out there, and anyone who just wants to get in touch with, you know, what shaped your life, because that's a really cool thing, is thinking about what shaped your life. So 3 fabulous books to read and tons of tips to get you writing. You 3 are fabulous. And I'm glad you all have something else coming up. So do me a favor, and when that next book gets released, drop me a line so we can get you back here between the covers to share with our viewers.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything, and happy writing.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well, please visit BetweenTheCoversTV.com. By the way, at BetweenTheCoversTV.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.